I was standing in a courtroom, silently gripping the edge of the table in front of me, when my ex-husband's new wife pointed right at me and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's a gold digger. She only married him for money." The words didn't surprise me. Celeste had always hated me, even before Derek married her. But hearing it said out loud in front of the judge, in front of lawyers, in front of my daughter, it burned. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. Then Derek's lawyer, Mr. Klein, added fuel to the fire. He leaned forward and said with confidence, "There's a clear financial motivation here, Your Honor. Ms. Langley benefited significantly from Mr. Langley's income during the marriage. We believe her current financial demands reflect the same pattern." He was smooth, smug, and perfectly rehearsed. The way he said Ms. Langley, like I was some stranger. Like I hadn't been the one raising Derek's daughter while he traveled the country on corporate retreats. Like I hadn't been the one who paid our rent the first 3 years while he found himself. Still, I said nothing. I looked at my daughter, Tessa, 13 years old, sitting right behind me. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She looked small in that chair, but her eyes were blazing. And then, without warning, she stood up. "Mom," she said, her voice steady but loud enough to cut through the courtroom noise. "Should I tell them what we found in Dad's bank statements?" The entire room turned, every head. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Mr. Klein froze. His smirk vanished. He slowly sat back down, not saying a word. I didn't expect her to say it. I hadn't wanted her to. I had told her to stay quiet, to let the adults handle it. But my daughter had other plans. She wasn't going to let anyone lie about her mother. Not while she was watching. In that moment, everything changed. Before the courtroom, before the accusations, and before my daughter stood up, I was just trying to hold the pieces of my life together. After the divorce, it was like waking up in someone else's house every day. The walls were bare. My name wasn't on anything important anymore. I went from being Mrs. Langley to Mira, the woman who got left. Most people don't realize how fast things unravel when your husband walks out on you and replaces your entire life like it was just an outfit he grew tired of. Derek and I were married for 14 years. We met at the University of North Carolina. I was a junior studying education. He was this ambitious business major with a big smile and expensive dreams. I fell for him hard. Back then, he didn't have much, but he talked like someone who would. I believed in him. I worked nights at a diner to help cover his tuition and bills when he lost his internship. I put my own degree on pause when we found out I was pregnant. That was the start of everything, Tessa. I built my world around that little girl. While Derek worked his way up the corporate ladder, I stayed home, cooked, cleaned, packed lunches, and took pride in being the support system he claimed he needed. I thought that made me a partner. I thought we were a team. But success changed him. Or maybe it revealed who he always was. By the time Tessa was 10, Derek had stopped coming home on weekends. He was traveling more, spending holidays in hotel suites alone. The distance between us wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. I later found out he had been sending money to a woman named Raina. I didn't know it then, but she'd been in his life far longer than Celeste. When I confronted him about the lies, he didn't even deny it. He told me, "You've had it easy for years. You should be grateful." Grateful. For being cheated on. For raising our daughter alone while he built a second life behind my back. When he left, he didn't just take half the bank account. He took the house, the insurance, the car we shared, everything. I had to fight just to keep the small monthly alimony and primary custody of Tessa. He fought me on every decision, always claiming I was trying to bleed him dry. Meanwhile, he had a brand new home with a designer kitchen and a woman who dressed like a magazine cover. Celeste was younger than me. She had opinions about my parenting, my finances, my appearance. I never spoke to her directly, but she made sure I knew what she thought of me. She once left a voicemail saying, "Women like you are the reason men stop believing in love." I saved it. I don't know why. Maybe it reminded me that no matter how cruel she sounded, I wasn't imagining it. Despite everything, I stayed focused on Tessa. We had a small apartment 2 blocks from her school. I started tutoring part-time and eventually landed a position teaching 3rd grade. We didn't have much, but we had peace. I made homemade dinners. She helped me grade papers. On weekends, we baked. Sometimes we just sat on the floor watching old sitcoms with a bowl of popcorn and a stack of homework between us. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Then a letter arrived. Derek was contesting our custody arrangement. He wanted joint custody, which would reduce my child support by half. His lawyer claimed I wasn't providing a financially stable environment. He had no issue with my parenting. He just didn't want to pay for it. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, holding the letter, feeling like someone had knocked the air out of me. I wasn't angry. I was tired of having to defend my worth to people who had no idea what I had sacrificed. Tessa found me crying that night. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat next to me and held my hand. Then she whispered, "You don't have to fight him alone." "I know things, Mom. I see things." I didn't ask what she meant. I just hugged her and said, "You're a kid, Tess. You shouldn't have to carry this." But in her mind, she wasn't just a kid. She was my witness, and she was paying attention. The courthouse was cold. Not physically, I had on my nicest coat, but emotionally. Everyone in that room had already chosen sides. Derek sat to my right at the opposite table, arms folded, jaw tight. Celeste was next to him in a fitted blazer and heels, too high for a legal hearing. Her nails clicked against her phone screen. I could hear them even over the quiet hum of whispered conversations and shuffling papers. I sat alone with my attorney, a younger woman named Kayla Myers. She was sharp and kind, but under pressure. Derek's legal team had filed a motion that would change everything. If the judge agreed that I didn't provide a financially secure environment for Tessa, I could lose primary custody. It wouldn't just be about money. Tessa would be split between two homes, her routines disrupted, her voice pushed to the background. I glanced at her in the back of the courtroom. She had insisted on coming, even though I begged her to stay home. She wanted to hear everything. She said if they were going to talk about her life, she deserved to be there for it. I couldn't argue with that. The hearing started quietly. Judge Reinhardt reviewed our file without expression. Then Mr. Klein, Derek's attorney, stood and began his opening remarks. He walked the room like it was a stage, his voice perfectly paced, carefully persuasive. "Your Honor, this isn't about limiting a mother's access to her child. This is about protecting a child's best interest. Ms. Langley is currently employed part-time, residing in a rental property, with no health insurance plan in place. Meanwhile, Mr. Langley has the resources and stability to offer Tessa a more secure future." He didn't even look at me. I was just a line item in his presentation. Then came the blow. Celeste stood. She didn't have to, but she asked the judge to speak. He allowed it. She adjusted her sleeves, then stepped forward with the confidence of someone who believed every lie she was about to tell. "She only married Derek for the money," she said. "He paid for her lifestyle, her house, her vacations. And now she's trying to drain him through child support and alimony. She never loved him. She used him." My heart pounded. I kept my face still. I knew if I cried, it would look weak. If I got angry, it would look bitter. Either way, I'd fit the story they were telling. Celeste turned slightly to face the judge. "I'm not saying she's a bad mother. I'm saying she's financially motivated. That matters." Then came the worst part. Mr. Klein stepped back in, as if to underline her words with legal authority. "Your Honor," he said, "we believe Ms. Langley's financial motives have consistently influenced her behavior. She benefited substantially during the marriage and has continued to do so post-divorce. This is not about co-parenting. This is about ensuring fairness and responsibility." My chest was tight. I had stayed silent through so much, through Derek's betrayal. Through the nights, Tessa asked me why Dad was always busy. Through the months, I skipped meals so she wouldn't notice the fridge was getting emptier. I had kept my dignity through it all, but sitting there, while they framed me like some lazy opportunist, I felt like I was being erased. I glanced at Tessa again. Her fists were clenched in her lap. She was staring straight ahead, not at her father, not at Celeste, at the judge. I thought it would end there. I thought they had said their piece and we would move on to evidence, testimony, paperwork. But before anyone else could speak, Tessa stood up. "Excuse me," she said. The room quieted. She took a step forward. The judge looked surprised but curious. "May I speak?" The judge looked to me. I nodded, unsure, my heart thudding. Tessa walked up slowly, chin lifted. Her voice was steady. "I just have one question. Mom, should I tell them what we found in Dad's bank statements?" Gasps were audible. Mr. Klein blinked like he had misheard. Celeste's face tightened. Derek shifted in his seat. Tessa looked straight at me. She wasn't angry. She was calm, almost tired. Tired of pretending she didn't know. Tired of watching people lie about her mother. I didn't answer her out loud, but I knew there was no stopping her now. Everything was about to change. I didn't tell her to speak. I didn't ask for help. But Tessa saw through the silence I'd wrapped myself in. The truth had been weighing on her, and in that moment, she made the decision I had been too afraid to. She stood in that courtroom like she had every right to be heard. The judge paused, watching her with cautious interest. A child interrupting a legal hearing isn't something you ignore, especially not when the room has just been accused of hiding something. "I'm sorry," she said clearly, "but they're saying my mom took money from my dad. That's not true. My dad's the one who gave money away." Mr. Klein stood halfway as if to object, but the judge lifted his hand and gestured for him to remain seated. "Tessa, this isn't a formal testimony," the judge said gently, "but I'll allow you to speak for a moment. Go ahead." Tessa took a deep breath. She looked over at Derek, then at me. "A few months ago, when I visited Dad's house, he was helping me with my math homework. He logged into his bank account to pay for some online tutoring software, but he forgot to log out. After he left the room, I saw his screen was still open. I didn't mean to snoop, but something caught my eye. There were a lot of payments to someone named Raina Marcus. That name hit Derek like a punch. He blinked, tried to stay calm, but I could see the panic spreading in his face. Celeste stiffened next to him. She clearly recognized the name, too. "She got money almost every month," Tessa continued. "Sometimes twice. Not small amounts, either. I didn't say anything at first, but I told Mom about it later. She said it wasn't our business. She told me not to get involved. I had. I told her it wasn't her burden, that she shouldn't get dragged into the lies adults tell. But she had remembered every detail. Raina wasn't just a friend," Tessa said. "She was someone my dad used to sneak around with. I remember her from before the divorce. I saw her at a restaurant once. They were sitting together, laughing. Dad told me not to tell Mom." The courtroom was silent. Even Judge Reinhardt looked stunned. No one expected the daughter to speak, and certainly not like this. She was calm. She wasn't emotional or confused. She was precise, deliberate, and heartbreakingly honest. Tessa reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded envelope. "We printed the statements, just in case. I brought them." Kayla, my lawyer, turned toward me with wide eyes. She hadn't known about this either. I hadn't given the documents to her because I didn't plan to use them. I didn't want to throw dirt. I wanted to win with dignity. But my daughter had different instincts. She had watched people lie about me for years, and now she was done. Kayla stood and approached the bench, accepting the envelope from Tessa. She handed it to the judge. "Your Honor, I was unaware of this evidence, but if permitted, I believe it is relevant to the claim of financial motivation." The judge opened the documents. He read in silence. Page after page of Derek's secret transfers, thousands of dollars, all while claiming I was the one bleeding him dry. Mr. Klein stood up again, but this time more cautiously. "Your Honor, we object to the use of materials obtained without consent." The judge raised a hand. She accessed them while in her father's home, while he was logged in. It's not technically a breach, but I'll make a ruling on admissibility later. For now, I've seen enough to understand the broader picture. Derek looked furious. Celeste stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. I could see her mind working, rethinking every story Derek ever told her. That wasn't my concern anymore. The balance in the room shifted. No one was calling me a gold digger now. No one was pretending Derek had nothing to hide. I stood, walked to Tessa, and gently pulled her into my arms. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "I wanted to," she said. "You always protect me. I thought maybe it was time I did the same." I kissed the top of her head. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. The judge took his time reviewing the bank statements. Each turn of the page sounded louder than the last. No one dared speak. Even Derek's lawyer, who had paced the room with arrogance just moments before, sat frozen in his chair. His confidence had vanished. Judge Reinhardt finally looked up. "Mr. Langley, can you explain these recurring transfers to Ms. Raina Marcus?" Derek cleared his throat, then tried to smile. She was an old friend. I helped her out during a rough patch. The judge raised an eyebrow. A rough patch that lasted 3 years, with payments totaling over $60,000? Derek shifted in his seat. It wasn't consistent. Some of those were reimbursements. Does someone not related to you, not on your taxes, and not mentioned in your financial disclosures? The judge's tone was steady, but each word hit like a gavel. You claimed financial hardship under oath, Mr. Langley. You accused Ms. Langley of excessive demands while hiding tens of thousands of dollars in private disbursements. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I watched Derek shrink into himself while the weight of his lies pressed down on him. Celeste didn't move either. Her eyes never left the floor. Mr. Klein tried to recover. Your Honor, even if these transactions are outside the scope of our original claim, they don't disprove our central argument. The judge cut him off. What they do is severely undermine your credibility. You accused Ms. Langley of financial manipulation, yet your client was funding a separate relationship behind closed doors. That changes the context of this entire case. The room was silent. Kayla gave me the slightest nod. I understood what it meant. The judge wasn't just reconsidering child support. He was reconsidering the entire custody motion. Celeste finally broke the silence. She stood abruptly and turned toward Derek. You told me she was bleeding you dry, she said, her voice low but sharp. You told me you couldn't afford to cover both homes, and you were sending money to her the whole time? Derek tried to hush her. Celeste, not now. She pulled her arm out of his reach. No, this is exactly the time. You humiliated me in this courtroom. You dragged your daughter into this. And for what? To hide the fact that you were lying to all of us? She stormed out of the courtroom. Derek didn't go after her. The judge leaned forward. This case was brought to question the fitness and financial stability of Ms. Langley. Based on the evidence, I find that concern unfounded. In fact, I see a consistent pattern of integrity and restraint on her part. By contrast, Mr. Langley's lack of transparency and continued attempts to manipulate financial information raised significant concerns. He paused to let it sink in. Primary custody will remain with Ms. Langley. Child support will remain unchanged. Furthermore, the court will recommend a full financial audit of Mr. Langley's assets to determine if any further legal action is appropriate. I felt the breath return to my chest. Not relief, something deeper. Validation. I had spent so long proving I wasn't what they said I was. I didn't have to anymore. Tessa slipped her hand into mine. She didn't say anything, but her grip was firm. Her chin lifted like she was proud of what she had done. I looked at her and knew she would never forget this day, not because her father got caught, but because she told the truth, and it mattered. As we stepped into the hallway, people moved out of our way. The same people who had whispered when Celeste called me a gold digger now looked at me with something closer to respect, or maybe guilt. Kayla turned to me before she left. You didn't just win, Mira. You showed everyone who you are. I nodded, but my eyes were on Tessa. I already knew who I was. I just wanted her to see it too. She already had. The case was over, but something deeper had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I walked out of a courthouse not carrying shame. I wasn't a woman defending herself against lies. I wasn't someone trying to hold on to scraps of dignity. I was simply myself again, Mira Langley, a mother, a teacher, and a survivor who refused to be rewritten by someone else's story. Tessa and I got into the car in silence. I started the engine, but neither of us moved. She was staring out the window, chewing on the edge of her sleeve, the way she did when her thoughts were too big for words. You did something really brave today, I said, but I need to ask, are you okay? She nodded, then looked at me. Yeah, I just didn't think it would feel so heavy afterward. I reached over and took her hand. That's because you stood up for something real. Telling the truth can be heavy, but you did it with strength. I'm proud of you. She looked back out the window. I didn't do it for me. I know, I said, but you showed everyone the kind of person you are, and that matters more than anything they said about me. We went home to our small apartment. The walls still needed repainting, and the bathroom faucet still whined when you turned it too hard, but it felt warmer somehow, more ours, more earned. That night, after dinner, I tucked her in and sat beside her bed while she flipped through a comic book she'd read a dozen times. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and kissed her cheek. "Mom?" she asked. "Yeah? I know you didn't want me to say anything in court. Were you mad?" I thought about it for a second. I was scared. Scared it would backfire, scared they'd twist it and make it worse. "But you weren't reckless, you were right." She smiled. "I didn't want them to lie about you anymore. You're not what they said." I squeezed her hand. "Neither are you." After she fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. I opened the folder of paperwork I had once kept hidden, documents Derek never thought I'd organize, records he never imagined I'd keep. I had protected him for so long, not out of love, but out of habit. I wanted to believe there was still dignity in silence. But silence only works when you're surrounded by people who respect it. That courtroom had taught me something I hadn't wanted to admit. Staying quiet to keep the peace only works when you're not the one being attacked. I wasn't quiet anymore. Neither was my daughter. I didn't know what would happen next with Derek and Celeste. Whether they would stay together or fall apart didn't matter to me. I didn't need them to collapse for me to feel whole. Their cruelty didn't define me, and their judgment no longer held weight. What I carried out of that courtroom wasn't revenge, it was clarity. They called me a gold digger because it was easier than calling themselves out. They tried to reduce my sacrifices to dollar signs and court documents, but they forgot who had the real power. Me, the woman who kept going even when everything was taken. Me, the mother whose daughter saw her worth before the world did. I stopped chasing justice and started standing in it. At work, my colleagues asked how the hearing went. I smiled and said it was settled. I didn't share the drama, the tension, or the silence that followed my daughter's question. That moment was ours. It didn't need to be retold like gossip. It was part of our story now, one we owned, one no one else could narrate for us. The next morning, as Tessa got ready for school, she looked taller somehow. She pulled her hoodie over her head, slung her backpack over one shoulder, and smiled at me like nothing could knock her off balance. "Ready?" I asked. "Always," she said. So was I. I wasn't a gold digger. I was a mother. And they will never forget the day my daughter reminded them who I really was. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or misjudged, I hope you know now that your truth has power. And sometimes it just takes one voice, like my daughter's, to remind the world of it. If you felt something while watching, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you want more real emotional stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment that matters. Thanks for being here. Your time, your heart, and your voice all matter.